When purchasing a home, there are a lot of one-time expenses that can come up. So it's really important to consider these before purchasing a home because there can actually be quite a bit of a cost right at the beginning. So the largest cost when you're purchasing a home is obviously the down payment. So the down payment, if you recall, is the money that we have to pay up front. Basically, that money lowers the amount of money that you're going to pay for your mortgage. It lowers the amount of money that you're going to borrow from the bank. So you have to have a minimum of at least 5% of the cost of the house as a down payment. So that means if we think about the average house in Manitoba, you need to have at least about $11,000 saved up. Now there's some other costs that also come up when purchasing a home. So these are just a few examples, but you can have things like a property appraisal. So this is when you have somebody verify the value of the home. You may need mortgage insurance if you have less than 25% down. You may need to get a land survey. A land survey basically just checks that your house is not infringing upon your neighbor's property and that it is on your land that you own. Lawyer fees. Lawyers are going to have to help in the purchase and mortgaging of your home and property, so you'll have to pay them a fee. The land transfer tax, which is a fee to transfer the ownership of your property. You're also going to have to pay any outstanding property taxes for the part of the year that you own the home. You also may have an interest adjustment, so when you're purchasing a home, there might be some time in between the closing date and when you have your first mortgage payment, so you would have to pay the interest between those 2 days. There can also be things like repairs, renovations, new appliances, there's moving expenses that you might have to pay for. So there can be a lot of things. Reminder is that sometimes on these expenses, you may also have to pay taxes. So you may have to pay GST or PST or both. So just a little reminder here of how to calculate the cost with the taxes included. So with GST, you can multiply the cost by 1.05 to give you the total with GST. 1.07 will give you the total with PST, and multiplying by 1.12 will give you the total with both taxes. So if we look at this first example, it says Anthony is purchasing a home. He has a down payment of $40,000. He also needs to pay legal fees of $750 plus GST, gets an appraisal and land survey for a total of $500 plus GST, and hires movers for $900 plus GST. Determine the total initial costs. So what I've done here is taken all these amounts that we need to add GST to and added them up. So 750 plus 500 plus 900 is $2,150, and multiplied that by 1.05 to add the GST. So 2,257.50 is the total with GST, and then added the down payment, which of course wouldn't have tax on it, to get a total of $42,257.50. Now, as mentioned, you may also have to pay a portion of your property tax that's owing. So for example, most properties, most places will be assessed property taxes on a yearly basis, but if you move in partway through that year, you would have to pay a portion of what's still owing. So to calculate this, there's a few different ways you could do it. The easiest way is to take your annual cost and determine the monthly cost by dividing by 12. And then you can multiply by the number of months left in the year. So for example, Matt bought a house that has an annual tax bill of $1,350. He moved in on May 1st. Calculate his portion of the property tax. So the first thing I did was take the $1,350 and divide it by 12. This gives us a monthly cost of $112.50. Now, if he moved in on May 1st, that means he needs to pay the property tax for May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. So that's 8 months. So we take $112.50 times 8, and his property tax will cost $900 for the remainder of the year. Another fee that has some specific calculations is the land transfer tax. So a land transfer tax is based on a percentage of the purchase price. So in Manitoba, you pay this amount to the land titles office when the title is registered. So that means when you take ownership of the property and home. It's calculated as followed. So we've got on the first $30,000 in value, there's 0%. You don't have to pay anything. On the next $60,000, you're going to pay 0.5%. On the next $60,000 after that, you're going to pay 1%. And on the remainder, so any amount over $150,000, you're going to pay 1.5%. So to calculate this, you're going to calculate it in sections. So what is the land transfer tax on a house purchased for $160,000? So on the first $30,000, you're paying nothing. It's 0%. You don't even really need to do this math. It's just $0. On the next $60,000, you're going to pay 0.5%. So 60,000 times 0.005, which is $300. So altogether here, this was 30,000 and 60,000. We're up to $90,000. We need to pay on 160. So on the next 60,000, you're going to pay 1%. So 60,000 times 0.01, which is $600. Now we've reached 150,000 as our total, 30 plus 60 plus 60. And so the last remaining bit is $10,000 more dollars. And on that last $10,000, we're paying 1.5%. So times 0.015 is 150. So altogether, we just add these amounts up. We would pay a total of $1,050 in land transfer tax. In the last example, we've got Brittany, who's relocating to Brandon. She purchases a home for $120,000. And laid out here, we've got all of the expenses associated with her move. So what I've done is done this bit by bit. So the first one is she hires a mover to move her belongings. The mover charges $1,500 plus GST. So I've got the mover, $1,500 plus GST, we're going to be multiplying by 1.05. So $1,575. Next, she hires a lawyer to look after the legalities for a fee of $800 plus GST. So similarly, 800 times 1.05 is $840. An appraisal of the property is done at a cost of $120 plus GST, and a survey is done for $450 plus GST. So I added those together, $570, and then multiplied by 1.05 to get the total with tax, $598.50. Her possession date is July 1st. Her annual property taxes are $1,750, and she has to pay for the balance of the year. So July 1st, she's going to have to pay for July, August, September, October, November, and December, so 6 months. So the taxes divided by 12 means the cost is $145.83 per month, times 6 months is $875. You could also, if it's $1,750 for the year and you're going to have to pay for 6 months, you could also just divide by 2. So take this and divide it by 2. You get the same answer. Next, she's charged an interest adjustment of $325. So that doesn't have any taxes or anything like that, but I've just included it in the list for when I look for the total. Then she's got sod being installed for $1,500 plus PST and GST, and gets a new stove and refrigerator for $750 and $900. So the total here would be $3,150, and all of those things have PST and GST. So 3,150 times 1.12 for both taxes gives us a total of $3,528. And then finally, it costs $65 plus GST to hook up cable and internet. So $65 times 1.05 is $68.25. I've got all of these costs subtotaled. So to find the total, you're just going to add all of these up, which gives you total costs of $7,809.75.